Hello, so today's video is all about the Canon 15mm fisheye lens. Now, this is a lens that was launched in I think 1987, so it's been knocking around for a while. And I first got my hands on one in something like 1999 when I was on assignment doing a feature on Manchester United Football Club. And I had a very specific picture in mind that I wanted to take, and so I borrowed a 15mm fisheye from another photographer. And as soon as I put it on my camera, which was a film camera back in those days, I just liked the drama of the perspective that the fisheye lens gave. And now it took me another probably 6 or 7 years until I managed to get my own version, which is this one, and I've been using it ever since in my life as a professional photographer. Don't use it that often, it's a lens that has to be used sparingly, and we'll go on to talk about that in a minute. But in this video I'm just going to talk about some of the good things about it, some of the bad things about it, some of my experiences of using it, how and when I might use it. To begin with though, I'll just show you a few of the examples of some of the pictures that I've taken with it over the years, just so you can get an idea of the kind of pictures that you can take with a lens like this. So what is it? Well, a fisheye lens is an ultra-wide lens. It's got a big bulbous element on the front of the glass, and it gets pretty much everything in your frame. It goes about 180 degrees from corner to corner in terms of coverage, and bends the corners of your frame like a banana. Pretty much distorts everything inside it. And this look used to be quite rare, but then GoPro came along and now it's quite commonplace to see fisheye video and stills photography. So we need to be careful about how we use. Don't want to overuse a lens like this. Now, just to go on to details of the lens itself, it's got 20cm close focal distance, which is very useful. It has a built-in lens hood because of the big curved front element, so you don't get the lens hood in the frame, and it has this very clever lens cap which comes with it, which snaps over the whole lot, keeps your front element safe. Now mine's got a bit of gaffer tape on the top because this has always been a bit loose. The gaffer tape just means that it doesn't fall off no matter what I do with it. You can't screw filters on the front, but you can slot them into the back using this little holder. You need to cut down gel filters. I've never done it personally. And in manual focus, this thing has a hard stop infinity focus, which is very cool, which means if you're doing nighttime photography, you can always find infinity just by kind of turning it to the hard stop, which is very handy. Not all lenses have that. And autofocus, you know, it's quite noisy, but it's rather accurate as well. I mean, this lens was launched in 1987, so it's been around for a long time. Works okay. Obviously, with a wide-angle lens like this, pretty much everything is in focus most of the time anyway. But if you're working quite close to the camera, you'll rely on that autofocus and it's fast and accurate. I think the most interesting thing about a lens like this is its perspective that it gives. So I'm just going to show you a few examples of how this lens looks versus a typical wide-angle lens. So here we go with that. Okay, so just to give you an idea, this is roughly 28mm, which is a pretty standard wide-angle lens focal length. And here we are with the 15mm, so you can see how wide and distorted everything is. So this is what it looks like on a 28mm, 15mm fisheye. 28mm, 15mm fisheye. Okay, so this is me from the future. I'm recording this little clip after everything else, which is always a bit odd because I know what you're going to see in a few minutes' time. It's almost like being a time traveller. But there's two things that I want to bring to your attention. First is a little bit of behind the scenes from the world of professional photojournalism, newspaper photography, that I'm sure some of my viewers will relate to. And that is that the fisheye lens always attracted a certain level of groaning and moaning from picture editors around the world. Because whenever their photographer of choice finally managed to get hold of a fisheye lens, they knew that for the next 2 or 3 weeks they were going to see nothing other than the fisheye perspective until everybody was so utterly bored of it they never wanted to see it again. So, you know, I can remember one picture editor that I used to work with nicknaming a particular photographer Captain Birdseye because he always really liked using the fisheye lens. Now, don't be a Captain Birdseye. If you get hold of one of these things, just use it sparingly and appropriately. Secondly, in a couple of minutes time in this video, you're going to see me drag out this thing, which is my underwater housing, which I use with my fisheye lens. Now, I haven't touched this thing for maybe a year or 18 months, something like that. It gets not that much use these days. Now, literally 15 minutes after I dragged it off of the shelf to show you, I had a call from an editorial client giving me an assignment for tomorrow that is going to require me to use this thing. Now, how strange is that? I'm literally blown away by that fact. Anyway, back to the video. Okay, so how and when do I use a lens like this? And these are only my opinions and the way that I do it. Everyone will be different. These things are all subjective. But I use a lens like this when I want to create a very immersive picture that the viewer feels like they're part of, that the viewer feels like they're in the middle of whatever's going on. And I don't give a damn during those moments about whether the horizon is bent or whether the body is distorted or whether it looks completely unreal or whether there's different bits of elements of the pictures spiking in and whether there's distortion. I just want it to kind of be full of drama and an unusual perspective and theatre and just to become a fully almost immersive thing all by itself. And you'll notice that I quite often use quite strong lighting, and I quite often use kind of over-exaggerated poses when I'm using this lens, and often quite dramatic post-production techniques as well to try and kind of create that sense of drama. And really, it's almost like in contrast to a lot of the other photography that I do, which it tends to be quite technical, and where you want your uprights to be perfect, and where you want your horizon to be nice, and everything to be sharp and in perfect perspective with each other and sort of technically, you know, spot on. Whereas this lens almost throws all of that out the window and you can come up with these kind of almost superhero cartoon-like pictures. And I quite like that. So that's why I use it. Also, you will have noticed that I use it with my underwater housing, which is kind of one of the first reasons that this lens came into my hands, was because I wanted to use it with an underwater housing. Not all the time, but it kind of works quite well because I do a lot of work around the surfing kind of environment, water sports and stuff like that. And so the dome on here enables you to get that kind of lovely view in the water. It's another story, but that is also how I use it. Also, it's great for if you're running around with, let's say, I'm trying to think of an example of when I've used it. If you've got 3 kids and a dog that you're photographing on a specific beach, and you've done your picture with a long lens of them all running around, and that's all very cool, but it can become a little bit kind of, I don't know, kind of static. Sometimes you want to just kind of run around with the camera, not even looking through it, doosh, 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 in the middle of everything. So you've got arms and legs and a dog and some shadows and some weird dynamic kind of compositions going on. It's great for that kind of run and gun stuff. Okay, let's put that away. So, what are the negatives of it? Well, I think the biggest negative is what we've touched on a couple of times already, is that it's a one-trick pony and you can overuse it. And it can become a very kind of boring perspective if it's not used correctly. Just because you've got the ability to create a dramatic picture doesn't mean to say that you should use it in every single frame. I guess another negative is this big bulbous element on the front, which is easily damaged, really easily damaged. Now, this is the second element that I've had on this lens on the front, because the first one I had became too scratched. And, you know, that's not the cheapest fix in the world. These lenses, by the way, are 350 quid-ish second-hand, which is, you know, not the cheapest thing in the world, nor the most expensive. There are other fisheye lenses out there. I won't go into comparisons. There are others out there. But kind of, in terms of as a fisheye lens, I think that's a reasonable price. Also, you have the negativity of the GoPro effect, that obviously, if it's that look that you're going for, you could also do it with a GoPro. What's good about it? Well, it's super sharp. You know, forget about the fact that it distorts everything and you get, I don't think that, you know, for me, super technical sharpness is not something that you typically associate with a fisheye lens. But this lens is sharp, and at kind of 5.6 or f8, it's sharp in the corners as well, ish. It's kind of nice. Kind of flares nicely and handles everything in its own natural way. And as I've spoken about a lot before in other videos, it's all about understanding the nature of what you're dealing with. And the nature of this lens is that it's firmly a fisheye lens, and it does what it's supposed to do very well. So long as you understand what the nature of the lens is, it might be very good for you, or something that you kind of take a swerve around and move on. And I guess, you know, on a full frame camera, it's perfect. You get the full fisheye effect. On a crop sensor camera, probably less effective, because there are other lenses out there which offer wider options for fisheye lenses, for crop sensor cameras, and they don't have the distortion, whereas this 15mm fisheye on a crop sensor camera will lose most of the fisheye effect and not actually be that wide. So it's kind of maybe a bit of compromise on a crop sensor camera. I guess in summary, we come to the point where, you know, would you be better off with a 16mm-ish zoom or a 20mm prime or something like that? Because a wide-angle lens that doesn't distort has so much more use for so many different things, and you may find that, you know, you can correct this fisheye effect in post-production now really quite well. So rather than having curved effects on the edges of your frames, it will straighten them. And I personally have played around with that, and, you know, sometimes I might use that, but mostly I wouldn't, because I use this lens for the nature with which it was kind of created, which is to create the drama of the fisheye effect. But you could also add some of that fisheye effect with a non-distorting wide-angle lens if you wanted. So, you know, if you understand the nature of a fisheye lens and you really want that for something specific, then it could be a really good lens for you to, you know, to borrow, hire, buy, whichever way you wish to go. But if you're just kind of experimenting with wide-angle lenses in general, then I would say sort of avoid the fisheye look, because you'll get much more use out of something that is a kind of normal wide-angle lens, as in with straight edges. I hope this has been of some help to you in some shape or form. Please do subscribe, like, and leave me a comment, because as always, I love to hear from people. And, you know, I have some lovely comments, and there's some great people that leave comments that really amazing amounts of information and experience there. So I'm very grateful to you all. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.